Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to Shadowverse. So, the crazy train never stops, as it were, and time has moved forward, and now there is this Rebellion Cup arena that is going to happen, I suppose, for 3 days. So, I'll have to figure out what that is all about and try to throw my 2 cents in there. Probably not succeed very well. As far as this quest event, I only have a few more games I need to play before I will have claimed everything. And as far as some of that is fairly low. As far as the guild that I tried to match up with, they haven't accepted me yet. And I have daily quests, so we need to re-roll that. And really, basically, none of that has anything to do whatsoever with the solo mode. But it does go to show that the main story solo mode is still becoming this extra bit of work. Whereas normally, when I'm playing a collectible card game and just streaming it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's the day where I just play that game and only play that game for that amount of time, that 3 hours, and then I have a break in between and on the weekends in which I can play something completely different, which is definitely how I want to run my channel. Perhaps not really how YouTube wants you to run your channel, since it does seem like the vast majority of video game critics and streamers do focus on just playing Minecraft or Roblox or something along that line. Let's hop into the story here. But I could not, for the life of me, stand to go through my life just playing the same thing without jumping around a little bit. That's really not even what real gamers, I would say, do. People maybe play one game at a time, but once they beat that game, they put 30, 60 hours into it, maybe 200 hours if it's a long JRPG type game, but after that, you just stop. You move on to the next thing. You're more varied as a human being than just as a repetitive content robot. Yeah. So, as far as Erica's story, I'm not expecting too much. Really.
I am Tetra, and my world is in danger.
We want to know more about the character nicknamed Misty, and we'd like to know more about the other two brothers, and just in general what is actually happening and what could be the really close to the, like,
Pardon me?
I'm not sure how we're going to really get a solution here.
I admit I have little faith in my memory, but I don't recall seeing your face before.
It's interesting that her shield has a sword holder in it.
My name is Erica.
Because she's also like the only character we've seen that has actually had a shield. Everybody else just has gauntlets. Or shoulder armor or something like that.
I only wish to observe you more closely. Why don't you tell me who you are first? Do you mean to say you don't know me? How is that possible?
So, for Misty, we've got the belly window and the cleavage, which is about pushing it as far as I think they will push it. But then you also have the kind of overemphasized cleavage on Erica.
Oh dear, not very friendly, are we?
The thing that I was wondering about with Erica's story more than anything is this going to be another female character that kind of hits on Erica? Is Erica possibly going to strike up some kind of romantic interest in this character, or Ladacia, the tiger cat girl character? Because then that would be kind of foregoing her secret love, or at least not expressed out loud love with the princess. And at a certain point, if they wanted to have that kind of romance happening, they should just
Curious.
bring the princess
Can I ask
back.
you to hold that thought for one
Like,
moment?
it wouldn't be a bad idea if they're
The forest guide you on your journey to the great beyond.
if the main leader's characters actually did decide to like
Now
show
then,
back
where were
up.
we?
So if Luna's parents were magically brought back by
Not only is
Nerva
your face
in
unfamiliar,
some
but
nefarious
your name is as well.
twist, that would be
That's not
interesting.
all.
If Kyle was brought back to
This
life, if the
sword
princess
fighting
was brought
technique is
back to
like
life,
nothing I've
if
ever seen
Alexander
before.
was brought back to
Normally I
life,
would avow that words are a force greater than
like,
swords, but you
if someone important to
are
you
quite
on
an enigma.
was brought back to life, like, you could have a whole
So many
heaven
mysteries
realm
surrounding you. I
where
suppose there's only one
Nerva
logical conclusion
intentionally
as to who
brought them
you
to
are.
a heaven-like realm, and then brought
You
all
must
of the
be
characters back into the
some
story,
new breed of forest spirit.
and that would potentially confuse
way.
the issue and distract all the leaders
Oh,
so that
and
they
here I was thinking I
don't
had you all
fight
figured out.
against
So
Nerva so
The
effectively.
truth is, I came here from another world, so it's only natural that you have no memory of me.
Another world, you say? I see. I suppose I should have considered that possibility.
You don't seem surprised.
I can't say
They
I am.
kind of need to write the
Doesn't strike me
story
as odd that there would be other worlds out there aside
that
from our own.
people don't
So
have to
I
even
gather
go
you
into
grew up
2
familiar with this
sentences,
area, then.
Yes, I actually just
even
arrived.
because
I see.
because
allow me to
every
act as your
chapter
guide.
they're gonna have this
Are you sure you don't
same
mind?
sequence over and over again where
Guiding the lost
the
is
person,
duty of the forest princess.
the leader
In other
doesn't
words,
know what's going
myself.
on.
Another
They meet
worlder
somebody
like you
who
no
is
exception.
local. They confess that they are from
Judging
another
that
world.
look in your
They
eyes, I get the
they
impression
don't
that you
really
doubt
question
my
it,
words. I
and then they
cannot
offer
help
to
but
be
feel
a
insulted.
guide.
You still haven't answered my question. Who are you?
Me? As I said, I am the forest princess. Oh, my apologies. I haven't said my name, have I? Silly me.
And see, she is princess,
I am Miss
and she is a
Selena,
princess.
guardian of the forest of Natera.
I apologize for my insolence, Your Highness. I wasn't aware I was speaking with someone of your station.
There's no need to apologize.
So this is gonna
I
be
still
a
have much to learn before I deem myself worthy of the title.
good
You may
example
feel free to call me Miss Selena.
of them,
And please,
of her falling
me
back
Erica.
into her old
Erica.
role as
It
being
really is a lovely
kind of a
name, now
maid
that I hear
slash
it again.
bodyguard of the princess,
Well then, Erica,
which
I shall be
her
more
outfit
than happy to show
oddly
you
is
around
kind of
Natera.
maid-like.
But I'm afraid you've selected a less than
She
ideal
would have been a
spot
good
for
character to
sightseeing.
not have a
Natera
sword or a
isn't
weapon.
exactly a peaceful place. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
And I'm wondering if maybe Miss Selena is calling herself the Forest Princess because
But don't worry.
she's
I'll explain
like
everything as we walk.
betrothed
Come,
to one of
let's
the
be on our
brothers.
way.
Either that or she is just the sister that they weren't talking about. And yeah, every time we go through one of these chapters, they go for so incredibly long. I
Here we
want to
are,
rush
Erica.
as fast
This
as
is what I
possible
wanted to show you.
through the story.
there's something unpleasant about this place.
I rather concur. This area has been blighted, you see.
Blighted.
Natera is a world blessed by the bounty of nature. Or it used to be, at least. All that changed when Viridia Magna began spreading her corruption throughout the forests.
Who is this Viridia Magna you speak of?
She is the virtuous mother who presides over the natural order of Natera, the great one who nurtures all life and transcends all creation. That is Viridia Magna.
Paying attention
She
here.
was once a
Although,
kind and
actually, I'm
gentle
thinking
being,
about just
until one
how would I
fateful day
actually
when she
scale
lost
these
her mind
characters.
and transformed into nothing less than an executioner.
Like, you could turn them into
As
busts
time goes on,
and
her
have
blight
much smaller
continues to
squares.
spread, corrupting everything in its
You could,
path.
at any point,
Upon
cut a
Viridia
foot
Magna's
or
full
two
roar,
off the
the
bottom
world
half
will
since they're
meet
not
its
showing the feet
demise.
anyways.
Or so the legend says.
You could zoom in more
Magna has become an
and have them be
executioner, as you
bigger.
put it. I assume you must be working to defeat her.
But
No,
particularly, I would say they're
far
just
from
kind
it,
of
actually.
very wide
But that requires a separate
in the animation.
Hey, look over there!
Well, fit in the forest, princess. Always wandering
And
around without a care in the world.
She seems a little short, but
My
I wouldn't
apologies,
say that
Erica.
inherently
It seems my
is
explanation will
designed
have to
to
wait.
indicate her to
Who
be
are they?
young.
Enemies of yours?
But we still have a
Yes, they are
instance
members of Managana, prickly
of
sorts who enjoy
men
violence.
being at least half a foot
They wish to
taller,
defeat the virtuous mother,
which
while
is
Skull seeks to save
not
her.
terrible.
If they can
Actually,
just
in
find
this
a way to
ratio.
communicate with her, that is.
And we want to keep an eye out and see if these guys have orange when they're part of the Managarma, and if they have like a different color if they're part of the
Are
skull.
all Managama soldiers this rude and uncivilized?
Only because we're not so foolishly hopeful. We're not going to sit around and wait for everything to be destroyed.
I understand the situation now, Miss Delina. If you intend to fight, I will lend you my assistance.
I would very much appreciate that. After seeing you in action earlier, I know I can rely on your skill.
I suppose it is nice writing too to not have the main leader and the new important characters be so incredibly powerful that they can just in one slash take down regular people. There isn't that level of power creep
Splendid work.
that sometimes happens in
Praise is more than
stories.
I deserve.
Damn you!
Hmm.
You haven't seen the last of us!
I also would say
Next time,
it's nice that Shadowverse didn't really establish itself
And a good
as
day to
being
you both.
guaranteed to always be
Have they been after
fantasy,
you for long?
because then the previous chapter would have
I am
been
a
weird with
princess
all the
after all.
robots.
They know I
Um,
make a valuable
And if they had done the opposite and
Isn't it dangerous for you
and
to
tried
be
to
walking around
establish it
without an
as a
escort?
sci-fi story, then it would be very, very weird
Perhaps,
for all the
but I wouldn't
fantasy
be able to
elements.
accomplish anything
Uh,
if I was kept under strict guard day in and day out.
Whereas
One would assume being
I recently
protected is part of
decided
a
to waste some
noble's
time
duty.
watching some things on the Sci-Fi Channel,
My,
and
are
they
you
literally
perhaps
weren't
worried
science
about me?
fiction
I
at
thought
all,
you were unfriendly, but it seems I misjudged you. You're actually quite kind.
which is ridiculous.
Not at all. I simply have experience serving a noble house.
On the other hand,
Oh?
the
I
phrase
imagine that
Shadowverse has
means you
never
were a
proven
member
to
of the
mean
royal guard
anything.
for a princess or king.
It almost
Something like that.
comes off as like a secret verse
me,
of
if
a
I came off
religious
as indolent.
text or a religious song.
I understand your concern.
And I
But you
imagine
needn't
that's not
worry
what
about
that's
me.
supposed to translate to. I imagine it's supposed to be
truly guide
a
their
shadow
flock,
universe,
shepherds must occasionally
or
expose themselves to wolves. That is true for
which-
any leader. Don't you agree?
the idea of there being a shadow universe
If you'd like,
would
I
be
would
interesting.
more than happy to offer you
And
my
so they
protection,
probably
Erica.
should throw out that
thank
concept
you.
that the keepers
I have
come
no
from a
interest in
shadow
being a sheep.
universe
But I have
uh,
to admit, your skill with a sword
full
is quite
that is
impressive.
a dark echo of all
Isn't it, though?
existence of
I
all the rest
actually
of the
learned from my
multiverse.
father.
Someone help!
So this time this guy has
For you to
green,
start cooperating.
and then this guy has orange.
Would
And
you
then that guy
excuse
has
me for a
orange,
moment,
so-
Erica?
If there was supposed to be a color palette,
Scoundrels! Ganging up on an adversary is the epitome of cowardice.
this does feel like a world where there's barely
There she
100
goes.
people,
How
though.
does she manage to move so
They're
fast?
never really gonna scale up
Miss
this
Delina's an
these kind of
entirely
stories
different breed of
to
princess.
giant armies of thousands of
To
people.
truly guide their flock, shepherds must occasionally expose
And do we really need a
themselves to
flashback
wolves.
to something that
That
was
is true
literally
for any
said 2
leader.
minutes ago?
Don't you agree?
Hmm.
Hi. You kind of smell like a racer. Hold still. Let me get a nice whiff.
Hmm.
Who are you? And what do you think you're...
She's blushing.
Yep. Jackpot. You must be a racer's pal.
And what if I am? State your name.
Latica, and you are adorbs. This must be my lucky day.
How dare you grab my hand without permission?
So she's gonna be all gropey and flirty.
You're pretty strong.
Huh? What is wrong with this girl?
Fairly aggressive, which romantically aggressive is not something that flies in 2020 as of this recording. So in a sad way, the story may have accidentally dated itself
Going for a walk?
prematurely.
Miss Delina was guiding me through the forest. Please kindly give me some space.
Misty, huh? She's a nice gal. Kind of an idiot, though.
You would say that about the Princess of Natera?
Sure would.
Is it alright to let her wander around on her own?
Probs? Why?
Normally someone in her position would have a guard assigned to her at all times.
Maybe. But she's like, a special case or whatever.
What do you mean?
I'd say Ladisha
Stand in front of Misty and break
is
faces
not-
for her, but she's got healing powers. And besides, she's not too bad with a sword, so
she's kind of
what's
a
the point
bad
me hanging over
character
her shoulder like a babysitter?
to be
Come off
giving
like obsessed much.
backstory,
Does that not
because
go
she's
against
just
your
going to respond
principles as
fairly
her
flippantly
guardian?
and not give much detail.
Oh, sweet summer sword, babe. Everybody's got their own strengths and weaknesses, yeah? Misty and I are no different.
On the other hand,
So, like,
she gets to the
sometimes
point a little
I
bit
do what I
faster.
do to protect her, and other times she does what she does to protect me. It's not a one-way trail. Not sure where I was going with that.
This is an
Well,
interesting
look at everything
argument,
I
though,
said.
compared to
No,
the
it's
idea
perfectly
of-
understandable.
a princess
You're okay.
and a
It's
bodyguard,
fine, Erica.
and
Everything's
because
okay.
technically speaking, the bodyguard
It's
should be
only a
doing
matter of
everything
time
for the
before he
princess, and the
comes for you,
princess should really not be doing anything for her, or typically
Erica.
wouldn't be.
In fact, I find myself agreeing with you. In the past, I believed I was the one protecting the princess. But in truth,
There is a problem with the
She was
princess's
the one
outfit
protecting
in that
me
she
all
has a
along.
very, very wide
Oh, you look so
skirt.
cute when you're stuck in thought, like a baby kitten playing with a little tail.
Ow! Hey! Unhand my cheek!
Just trying to put a smile
So
on your
this
face.
character loves to pinch
You're
cheeks,
really
but look at her
strange, you know
hands. Like,
Lol,
she'd have to
I
be
get that a lot.
really, really precise to not just pierce someone's cheek. Here we have another orange and another green.
I get that reaction a lot too. Anyway, I'm gonna spank these guys. You in?
I'll back you up.
Thanks. Stay safe, babe.
They do seem to just have a odd desire to give a lot of the characters weird ways of sounding or talking,
Stoneclaw's got a new friend,
which is
and she's
not
strong. Retreat!
not helpful. Not helpful at all.
I was pretty impressed, so babe. You could probably give Bailey on a
Kind of in
reference name.
contrast to live action shows, there have definitely been some
we go
live
after
action
them?
movies and shows where I've seen
We could.
secondary
But
characters
what's
that
that-
look like
what's
other
the
secondary
thought?
characters
Supposed to be saving
to the
Reese
point
right
where
now.
it's really
Not
hard to even keep it straight in your head who is who.
Where is she?
But you don't
something happen
have
to
that problem in an
Well, yeah, but
animation
don't slip out on me,
style.
I got this.
Particularly an animation style like this, where everybody looks
Or,
drastically different
this
if they're
makes
an
sense
important
you'd be worried
character.
about your pal.
So
Wanna tag along?
there really is no reason to give a unique
I managed to
way
send
of
them on their way
speaking
with a bit of
to give more
gentle
personality, or
Oh,
I mean, you could try to
Well, it isn't
give
Attica.
personality through that, but
Why
it
not
really
enjoy
wouldn't
the nice
succeed
stroll?
too well.
Yeah, no, I don't do walks.
But it doesn't make them
Nothing's on
sound
your end.
particularly identifiable.
no significant changes to speak of.
Just comes
Are you
off
on
as
patrol,
weird,
then?
as you have one
Gotta go save the
speaking
cute chickadee.
kind of like a
Looks like
valley
he's doing
girl
fine, so I'll check back
from
with you
California, and one of
Toodles,
them
Misty.
speaking like a feudal
She's an
a
odd one.
feudal princess.
It certainly doesn't help that she speaks in the dialect of the ancients. Even I find myself guessing what she means from time to time.
She is one of your retainers, correct?
Well, I suppose you could call her that. But Ladika's far more powerful than me. So it's not like I can simply order her to my side.
Then you operate completely alone?
In a manner of speaking. I've always felt like my father wasn't particularly fond of me. So, rather than be a burden, I decided to chart my own trails through the forest.
We have different music playing in the
you're not
background
going to
now.
argue with me? Usually people tell me that no parent would think of their child
But
as
we just had a
burden.
frame drop again on the
Unfortunately,
it
I can
loading the
sympathize. When I have
text.
that much.
Interesting.
Actually, forget it.
Don't worry. When one looks at the bigger
I
picture,
thought they had fixed that.
things don't seem so glum.
This is a weird
After
music
all,
in the background.
Each and every one of us possesses the capacity for love.
I wouldn't expect
That's precisely
trumpets.
why we were born into this world to begin with. Tell me, Erica, do you have a general understanding of Natera now?
Yes, I think so. Natera is ruled by a being called Viridia Magna, who is spreading her blight throughout
There
the
does
forests.
seem to be quite a
And
lot of
people are
cards
divided over whether to fight
in
her
the
or to
game
speak to her.
itself based on the Terra.
Beautifully summarized. Considering you've
So,
already gleaned so much,
We hit a
I
point
suppose
where
there's no reason to take you
there's
to
this
meet with my
possibility
I have another question.
the father
for
is
you.
still alive?
Have you ever heard of the Keepers?
father.
Hmm.
The Keepers?
She
No,
maybe
I'm
she's a
afraid not.
princess from a different kingdom.
But Ewan mentioned he could sense Nerva's power in this world. Does this mean she hasn't shown herself here yet?
Yeah.
Now
It
then,
feels like
if
the
you'd be
story
kind enough to tell me the
needs
names
to
of your
tell quite a
companions,
lot
I'd be
to
happy help you
balance
search
out
for
with the
them.
amount of cards that are based on
I'd
the
very much
Terra.
appreciate
It
that.
also kind of feels like thinking that this was somewhere around the
However, it
third
might be
year
faster to
anniversary
consult directly with Tetra.
that
She's seen all of us before.
all of this
Forgive
story
me.
and
I can
the
be
cards
rather
based
slow
off of
to
this
catch
story
on
are going to
sometimes.
have
Is
much more
Tetra one of your
relevancy
companions?
than
No,
say chapter
she's the
1
person
and
who
chapter
came to us
2's
seeking aid and
characters
brought
and
us to this.
cards, which have
Wait,
probably
Erica. Before you
either
finish,
cycled
there's
out of
something you must
rotation
know.
or
No one
have
by
been
the name of Tetra
over-
exists in Natera.
overpowered.
What? That can't be.
Curious. You seem to harbor a number of misconceptions concerning our world. Stars guide us. What is going on?
It's rather ridiculous that anyone would memorize all the names of everybody who lives on a planet. Would be also very interesting if it turned out that this world was the world of Belphomet and Tetra. It was just set either hundreds or thousands of years in the past or hundreds or thousands of years in the future, and life has either been wiped out and replaced with robots, or the robotic life has been wiped out and replaced with the animals in the forest. It does have that potential to actually happen, the story does have a potential of going that way, although I really still don't have a lot of faith that the storytellers and the writers of this story are going to subvert expectations that much. But Lydica speaking the old language could be a tease towards that for people really paying attention.
Is that true?
The question
Tetra's
then
not
would
in this
become,
world?
what
I
happens
swear on my honor as the forest princess.
at that
It
point?
is indeed the truth.
Like, if Yuan sensed
changes
Nerva's
everything.
power, then this would
It
have to be
seems
hundreds
that
of years
perhaps
in the
this world
future
wasn't
past
your
that
intended
point,
destination.
which means
You may be right.
we would have to find some kind of
Nevertheless,
cryogenic
there's no
sleeping
reason to be
pods
discouraged.
in which
It sounds as though your
Urias
companion,
and
Arisa, made it here as
maybe
well.
Belphomet
You're
and
not alone.
Yes.
and
That's
Luna and
And
Isabel,
don't forget about me, Erica.
and what was the
I
other
am
one
here for you as well.
too? Urias, Luna,
Did
Isabel,
I say something wrong?
and
Not at all.
Yuan.
Someone else.
Yeah,
told me the
Yuan
same
was
thing
in
a long
the.
time ago.
I see. Is this person special to you?
Wait a
Yes.
minute.
A princess I
We're gonna have to double check to see if Yuan is actually in both. Is actually in both stories.
Sins? How grave could these sins be? You
That'd be
certainly
weird if
don't seem
Yuan
like
got
an
split in
evil sort.
half at some point.
That's only because I hide them well. I am guilty of countless transgressions.
That would definitely subvert
I find that
expectations.
hard to
They
believe, but I do
get
want
to
understand
the
your pain.
Virgin Mana
You will
character.
give me your sympathy?
It turns out that Belphemont
Yes,
is
of
there,
course.
and
You seem
they're all
so
like
full of
trapped in some
sorrow.
kind of magical time bubble or something, or they're in
No one will be
cryopods.
effort.
Everybody gets back together,
Of course you are.
and then everybody fights
Every
a
life
giant
has
battle
value.
against
That
Belphemont,
is an unshakable
who turns out
truth.
to be the one causing the blight also.
But as much as I'd like to understand you better,
And-
your quiet nature makes that rather difficult.
Anything
So
to
what do you say
combine
we have a little
the past two
contest?
chapters into this chapter
A contest?
in some way should probably happen.
Normally, I would avow that words are a force greater than swords.
Otherwise, it's
But
going
I
to be
have a
very
feeling
weird.
Crossing blades with you may tell me what I want to know.
And you
What do you want?
definitely have a danger
But you were the
of
princess
the
of Natera.
stories
wouldn't be
going
able to
off the
live with
rails
myself
and
if
there
I hurt
being
you.
entire chapters
You would
only
be
around
wise
one of
not
the
to
leaders,
underestimate me.
and
I'll have
the
you know I'm
the main
quite
story kind
capable.
of just completely forgetting about other
Furthermore,
characters
I can
for
heal small injuries
potentially
on the spot, you see.
years.
And if the injury is more grave, we can always use the healing spring.
All right. If
Well,
you're sure this is what you want.
with the mention of the healing spring, it
That's
sounds
the
like there
spirit.
is a chance we're
I've
going to
been
end up with
fascinated
a
with your technique from the
spa,
moment I saw you
anime
swing
spa
your sword.
episode.
Your strikes are so swift and deadly. It will be an honor to experience them firsthand.
There's a lot of justification here to
Don't go
to
too
get
hard
to
on
a
me, then.
fight when normally
I'm afraid I can't make
they
any
weren't
guarantees.
bothering to really
In
justify
exchange,
fights.
I'd like you to promise you won't hold back either. Not bad. I'm impressed.
I could say the same for you. Your skill far surpasses my expectations.
It's kind of a great example there of how
Have you forgotten
off-putting
who I
that
am?
would have been if
I
we
am
were
the
playing the
forest
card
princess,
game.
champion to all
You
within
you have
this
that
world.
whole build-up and challenge to a duel, and then the actual duel is played out through the
Please
collectible
open
card
up to me,
game,
Erica. I
and
can
then you
tell
come
you're
back to
still
this part
hiding something.
where they're
Still holding
animating slashes very
My
poorly and
problems are
very
not the sort that should
cheaply.
Be revealed so readily.
There, you spoke! Wonderful! Now string together a few more sentences, so there's some meaning to this little exercise.
That's an interesting
I don't
sentiment
understand
because
why
it
you're so afraid of being honest with
it
yourself.
seems to be
With me.
fairly common that
Please,
characters
trust
in
me.
this main story will say very little or
Promise
not say
me with
anything of
everything you
importance
have.
or substance.
Pouring my heart out to you won't change anything.
I assure you, it will.
It'd be interesting if
I sense darkness,
Miss Lena
despair,
has
and deep sadness
some
within
kind
your
of
blade, along with
therapeutic
a murderous impulse, is it?
ability
Is that
or
perhaps your
telepathic
sin, Erica?
ability that can make people better people or
Surprised you, have I?
emotionally
I may be a bit
more
of a
stable.
dunce at times, but I pride myself on my intuition.
No, I'm actually not surprised in the least. Although I do admit that insight of yours is uncanny.
Insight is actually the name of one
You
of the
must
cards,
have taken a great number of lives with that sword.
which I guess is
Is
a
it
pretty
evident?
basic word.
Indeed, it is.
My past is stained with blood, yet I hid my crimes from the princess to enter her service. My loyalty was built on deception. No matter how much I'd like to start over, I'm a tainted soul now. And if I dare let anyone glimpse my past, it's like reopening a fresh wound. That's why I don't need your sympathy. My sins cannot be so easily
It
forgiven.
would be funny if
nor can I
Erica,
deny the forgiveness.
like, got hit in the head and
Make your
gained
crime sound
amnesia.
vast. Perhaps I
It would
cannot
let you
forgive
write
after all.
her as a less troubled character,
Oh, but only
more
because it is
fun-loving
not within
character,
my right to
and
forgive
then
you.
you could
Redemption
bring her
lies in the
back
hands of those
in
you've wronged, after
troubles
all.
by having
You should
one of her
apologize to
victims
them.
showing back up. Which
And
again,
once
yeah,
you do,
that would be a
then they
great
can
plot for
forgive you.
Nerva
Do you see?
to have them go to like a
Really be that
heaven
simple?
like realm,
There's no way to
and
know for sure.
her
ever
victims show up
tried?
and accuse Erica.
No.
Then perhaps you should. There is
Although I
merit
don't
in
think the
making
other
an
leaders
attempt at the very
particularly
least.
have enough victims to.
I have glimpsed
haunt them.
two natures dwelling within you. One is rational, acting as your conscience that represses its counterpart. A wild and beastly instinct with a thirst for blood. I don't know which represents the real you, but it's clear that you possess both. So don't you think it might be worth having a little more faith in your logical side?
You're just as odd as your retainer.
People tell me that a lot.
This is kind of important
You're
dialogue.
just as kind as you are strange.
Good character development of both of
That
Miss
one I
Delina and
only hear
Erica.
from time to time.
I can't bring myself to face the princess.
And it's
yet.
fairly well written.
There is one person in this world to whom I owe an apology.
Oh? Then you must strike while the iron is hot. Find them, and when you do...
Excuse me, forgot something.
She came back like 20 minutes later.
Delightful seeing you again so soon.
No doubt. Anyway, got what I came for.
What? Hold on, what do you mean?
I'm taking you to Arisa.
Oh,
Again,
that's
she
about-
was blushing.
When will you stop stealing powerful damsels from the forest floor?
And she just kind of
This
rockets
particular
herself off,
damsel is wallowing in
which is-
unresolved anguish.
which is kind of a funny animation.
Perhaps I can't save Natera in its entirety, but if I can at least help Erica through her suffering, then that will be enough for me.
The only real issue with something that was fairly well written like that, I mean, you're approaching there, I'd say 7.5, 7.6 out of 10 writing for that chapter. But then you run into the problem of how do you have a chapter like that with Urias? How do you have a chapter like that with Luna? You're going to have to set a lot of groundwork down and establish them as more
That was a reckless leap.
like more well-written characters first and foremost
Cut me
before
down
it would
this
feel
instant.
natural for
But this
your
was
eyes
faster.
to, for instance,
Well,
decide to
perhaps,
stop
but
fighting
speed is
everybody, or
nothing
Luna
without
to stop
dignity.
We're almost there anyway.
to stop blaming herself
I'm
for her
perfectly
parents'
capable of
suffering
walking by-
or death. I'm a little surprised they're not
Maria, follow me.
mentioning that, like,
For
her
a
skirt
retainer,
is
you don't seem
like
capable of
flying up
taking
every
requests.
time she falls from the sky or jumps
Hey, I'm back.
jumps upward.
Welcome back, Latika. Did you...
I keep calling her
She
Ladisha,
would.
but I guess it's
Let go of
Ladika,
me.
which
I told you I can walk by.
I guess would be how a Japanese
Erica!
person would pronounce that.
Arisa,
Excellent work,
But-
Latika. Were you able to pick up the sense of the others yet?
Doesn't really sound like a Japanese type
Nice.
name.
Like Chickadee and Sword Babe share the same smell, and I caught a few other similar whiffs out there. So
Then see what you can find.
right on, boss man. Oh, I saw Miss Delina by the by. She's
We're
looking good.
still looking for Rowan and Eris.
That is one burden off my mind.
Those should be
You
the
don't
other
have to
two
worry about
leaders
her.
in this
She can
story,
manipulate ether and stuff.
not Yuan.
But maybe you should see her anyway, just to catch up or whatever.
So I wasn't clearly
I
paying
know.
attention enough.
I know it's just.
And in this instance,
yeah, it's always
Erica
always
doesn't know who this
something.
guy is, so we don't have
I'll
the
get you
name
it all,
again.
boss man. Anyway, these other worlders aren't gonna find themselves. Toodles.
Erica, I'm so glad you're here. It's such a relief to see a familiar face.
And then this is going to be
It
repeated
really is.
content, but nowhere as bad as the repeated content in the
I have
past
something I want to ask you.
episodes.
And what is that, child?
Now we know his
I
name.
really believe Skoll and Managarmr should work together again. I'd like to try talking to the other side one more time.
Valdane is a dangerous man. Not even I can predict what he will do, Orisa.
I know the risk, and I know how scary he is, but I have to try something. It's better than standing around doing nothing, at least.
Perhaps you are correct. If you plead with him, he could come to his senses. But, Orisa, should you sense danger, any danger at all, please prioritize your safety. That man has good reason to hate me.
We still don't know why he
He
has
does?
good reason.
I could delve into our past, but I do not want to burden
This is
you before
probably
you
the
attempt to
worst part, and they put it right.
That and, well,
They
I'm
put
afraid
the
our
bad
story
writing
mislead
in the
a
section that you see
pure-hearted
twice.
soul like yourself. I once wavered, and now he and I walk two different paths. I don't want you.
I mean, you
to
could have
fall
really edited it down to, he has reason
I
to
understand.
hate me.
I'll
I
try to
once
get him to see
wavered, and now
reason
we
later
walk
on.
two different paths.
Come on, Erica. We've got a radical grip
You
to
could have
convince.
easily cut it, removed a number
I'm
of
going too?
lines of
Is that
dialogue,
bad? It would make me feel a lot better having you along.
which I definitely would abridge this main story.
I can't
Like-
refuse her when she looks at me like that.
Because you're never gonna have a situation
Will
in a
you
collectible card
join
game
me?
where somebody's
Fine. Let's move out.
complaint about the main story being short
Yay!
should be
Last one
legitimately
there's a broken
considered.
arrow.
Like you could legitimately consider saying the main story is boring, or that it's too long, or that it's not well written. Those are all legit criticisms. But when you consider the fact that Magic the Gathering Arena effectively has no main story in this game, even though there are some Magic the Gathering books and a lot of characters in Magic the Gathering are based off Dungeons and Dragons, the main collectible card game has no main story. Hearthstone has no main story, even though there are some extra adventure things that you actually have to pay extra for to get some small bits of story, and really not even that much even then.
Like nature?
Uh,
I feel so relaxed in places like this.
So
Definitely beats Asunia.
if this was, instead of an hour and a half
She acts
per
like being
leader
around me doesn't bother her.
per episode,
After
it
all,
could have easily
what I did
been
was unforgivable.
20 minutes per leader per
Oh,
episode.
only because it is
and-
not within my right to forgive
And
you.
even if it felt very
Redemption lies
sped
in the
up
hands of
and,
those
and
you've wronged,
abridged and
after
just
all. You
like
should
rushed,
apologize to them.
I don't think anybody's really going to
There's
complain.
only one thing to do. Here goes.
It seems almost like there's an arbitrary number of sentences that they
Arisa,
contracted to write between
I owe
each
you an apology.
fight.
I made a mistake. And it wasn't a trivial one.
And sure, when they have something
Why this
important
all
to
of a
say, they should
What are you talking
fully
about?
flesh it out and say take all
I
their
drew
time.
my blade against you.
But most of the
became your
time,
enemy.
they don't have
I
anything.
didn't even attempt to explain my position.
Most of the time, they're just saying 2 or 3 sentences that
thinking a
mean the
terrible
exact
fool.
same thing.
No, I don't. Not
Which
at
that's
all.
not how the
I was in the
Japanese
wrong
tend to
then,
speak.
And you will
If anything,
turned
it's
out to be
the
right.
opposite. They tend to be very subtle and short-worded.
Besides, I know you were going through a lot, right?
So,
That's when Liad was,
yeah.
you know. Erica, I could see how much it hurt you.
My past is rotten, Arisa. So much so that I can hardly bear to speak of it. And my time with Counter Solari, it brought it all back. It was...
Erica's story
mistake
also
before.
brings back the previous episode with the Counter Solari, which
So many have met
I
their
think
deaths
a
at the
lot
end
of
my
the
blade.
previous leaders should have
Children staring up at me with innocent
talked
eyes.
about them,
Arisa,
or-
I cut them down.
at least mentioned it
That's all in
the
the
previous
past.
episodes.
Arisa.
Here, let me see your hand. Latika held mine just like this earlier. It was embarrassing, sure, but it made me feel like things were going to be okay.
Erica, when I hold your hand, it gives me that same sense of comfort. That's how I know you'll be fine. You're not rotten at all.
There's a danger here of
Her hands are so
potentially spreading the gay
Spent
in the
almost my
form of
entire life in
Lanik,
the forest, and I've never had to suffer
which,
like you have.
I mean, I guess in general that there's been undertones that Erica was already a lesbian, but it does kind of, the way this is written, show that Lanika hits on Arissa. All of a sudden, Arissa's kind of becoming romantically close with Erica.
Well, you're my partner,
And-
and you've held on this long.
So,
We've
yeah.
held on this long.
And Arissa is particularly depicted as a naive character in the first place,
Considers me her partner.
which I think those are all
Faith in such
fairly
sentiments, but this time
homophobic
it's different.
concepts if you go too far with
Same for the
them,
others, too.
and
We're all
just kind of
fighting for some
inaccurate
ideal, or to save
concepts
those who
too.
love. That's what makes us allies.
I suppose you're right.
That all it takes is a little hand holding between
Wait, Erica, shh. Look over there.
females, and then they become raging lesbians.
Is that a cat?
On the other hand,
It's Major
like in the
Fluffy
Middle East, straight men hold hands
What?
all the time. That's very cultural. And but in Japan, where and Asia in general, there isn't a lot of hand holding or anything like that, and public displays of affection. Japanese tend to be very germophobic,
Stay back, I say!
so
Is it really just a cat?
yeah, that would be
I am no mere
fairly
cat.
weird.
And you better not mishandle me once more, you pointy-eared hooligan!
No. We just need to meet with Baldane again.
The Lord Commander? What are you plotting?
We're not plotting anything. We just wanted to talk to him.
Smells awfully fishy. Troops, assemble!
I kind of wish Mouskers
Did you spot
played
any, sir?
a bigger role in Erica's
Right
story.
in front of us, you flickwits!
Uh,
Catch him and tie him to a tree!
Yeah, if we were gonna go back to the concept of the travelers
Prepare to die!
just ending up trapped in the brains of new main characters,
To me.
and they were just
You go
like
after the
observers, that
Thank you.
would be a great way
I'm the
to
one you
just
should thank
follow
you. Now
Mouskers
hurry.
more and have him as a more interesting
you later.
comedic style character.
You're
Um,
going to fight alone. You got guts, I'll give you that.
No, I'm
And
not
so
alone.
the story is gonna split off.
As long as there are others who would care for me, I am never truly alone.
But I kind of question where the story is going to go for Erica. Unless she bumps back into Misty, or learns some new secret that takes her in a completely different direction, or bumps into Eris or Rowan. Seems like she's, at best, just going to end up fighting a bunch of random people in the forest.
She's a strong one, all right.
That's it for you. Who's next?
You'll pay for hurting our comrade.
This is a new outfit, I believe. Although, again, it's just like
Too many enemies around.
clothing,
Arisa could be in danger.
like paper doll clothing style
I've spent
technology,
almost my entire
just
life
adding
in
a
the forest,
Photoshop
and
layer
I've never had
that
to
you can
separate
toggle
you.
on and off.
But even though I
Once
don't
again, we're
understand what happened
flashing
to you in the past,
back to something that
I
happened less than a
understand
few
the
minutes
present,
ago.
Erica. I understand that you're hurting, here and now.
I wish
Must repay her kindness.
they had thought of this concept more with the main leaders. Even if they just would have to redraw all the characters. It would be kind of a hassle, frankly,
I'm not
to
looking away.
if this
Not
is your
from this
original
world, at
art
least.
and you don't
I have a
have
companion here
like
who
a
understands
a
me.
nude style body model
Damn you. I need
that you
backup over here.
started
Open
with,
double.
you'd have to effectively trace
I don't have
around
time to deal with them.
her
I have to get to
outfits
Arisa.
and
I won't hold back.
redraw
You
the
forfeit your
the
lives by
base
facing
body
me.
model. But even that wouldn't be a terrible idea, because you spend the extra budget now, and you have a nude body model of each of the characters that gives the anatomical proportions of what you're looking for, and then you can change the hair with just some Photoshop layers. You can change the outfits with Photoshop layers, and you're just left with a lot more of an opportunity to vary up the look. And the only reason you would stay with the same look, besides just laziness or lack of budget, is if you were trying to make the character look iconic, which I don't really agree with. Like, even the Star Wars characters, every movie had something slightly different about them. More battle damage or different appearance.
They held out longer than I expected. Arisa must have gone this way. I need to catch up to her, and fast.
It would be funny if she now has to fight Mousekers and he turns out to be super powerful.
She has to be around here somewhere.
But it seems like she's just going to end up fighting him.
Surely you jest. Do you truly believe the bonds of blood to be that strong?
I assure you they are.
I have my doubts. If you're so certain, prove it to me with your blade. I'll show you how easily your precious bonds crumble.
That's Miss Delina.
I guess what you would want to see,
What are you doing
and
here?
what's being hinted at
I could
here,
ask you the same thing.
is that Valdane would
Are you referring to the
injure
Archeress? I saw
Miss
to it that
Delina,
she escaped safely.
and then Erica would
Thank goodness.
like save her,
I don't
swoop in,
remember inviting any
and
other
take them
guests
to the
this
healing
little
springs,
get-together,
and
but
then
I'd
you
be
would
more
have
than
this
happy
kind
to
of
give you a proper reception.
like spa episode in the first chapter. Particularly if both of them got hurt.
Myself to someone who will soon meet their end.
Or perhaps they're trying to emphasize the draining effect
Please
of
let me
Valdane.
handle this, Erica. Valdane is far too dangerous.
How will you handle him alone?
I'll play it by ear.
In that case, I'll stay by your side until you think of a plan.
Yeah, Miss Delina, it does seem like she doesn't have
So stubborn, Erica.
much of a strategic
Ignorance
mind.
is a terrifying thing. It could very well spell your death.
We'd be happy to withdraw if you'd let us.
I think not.
Then we fight. Prepare yourself.
It's gonna be weird if it turns out that Eris or Rowan sides with Valdane now. If anything, it feels like there should be two other factions we just haven't seen, or Eris and Rowan should just wander around the forest not meeting much of anybody, just being attacked by random creatures. But that wouldn't be a very interesting story, would it?
How pathetic. Do you fear me? Worry not. I promise not to devour you whole.
And it really wouldn't have hurt anything to have
After all,
Eris
I prefer to savor my meals.
partnered with Arissa and just have two people in all of those stories, and Rowan partnered with Erica.
As if the blade itself is wasting away.
Listen to me, Erica. You have no chance of defeating Valdane. Everything he touches withers and rots.
Is he using some
Apparently,
kind of magic?
including magic sword.
Magic? No, this power stems from Valdane's.
Shall I bury you beneath the soil? Or
Apparently,
stream
magic
out from the
doesn't exist in
treetops?
this world,
Either way,
although
you'll
Aether
end up as
does,
food for the insects.
and drain abilities do.
Miss Delina, no! How dare you? You will regret this.
Will I now? Perhaps I'm mistaken, but it
Take
seems
note
you're
that
the
they've
one backed
animated
into the
him
corner.
with 4
My path
fingers
is paved with blood
and a
death.
thumb,
Do
when
you understand what you've
they
unleashed?
kind of could have easily
Of course
drawn him
not.
as a
I don't even know you.
monster with one less finger. That would have saved him a little bit of drawing.
I'm sorry.
Although I guess they are being fairly consistent
Stay with me.
with all their characters, that
I
they
thought she just
are
told
spending
you.
the extra effort to
Everything I touch
draw
rots away.
5 fingers and look humanoid. Except for like Mouskers.
Her breathing is becoming labored. At this rate,
Although,
she
although I
won't
guess
make
in Japanese culture, they wouldn't
Worried
want
about
him
the
to
forest, princess?
have less than
You
5
ought to be more
fingers because
concerned about yourself right now.
there's a concern there of reminding the kids that the Yakuza
it. But how do I
cut off
end
people's
this?
fingers, or cut off their own fingers as it shows of
Reporting for duty. Forgive us for the delay.
apology.
Who are you?
And that's why like Mickey
More
Mouse had
uninvited guests.
fingers added, and the Simpson
We're here under Lady
characters had their
Lavish's
fingers
orders.
added.
Fall back, you two. We'll handle this.
Don't be ridiculous. I cannot
And
allow my
apparently
subjects to
5
put themselves
people
in
can
harm's way.
can keep them busy while these two escape.
That's our job. You can put your faith in us, Your Highness.
Yeah, that didn't sound like a very powerful attack.
You have my gratitude. Grab hold of me, Miss Delina.
Well, this has turned into a bit of a bore.
Well, Valdane is a bit of a beefcake, and let's face it, the male
Sure not to hit
cat
fighters.
characters seem to be fairly nicely drawn. Like, I would say this is kind of more what you'd expect for an anime handsome man compared to like Urias with the giant chest. And even Valdane has a fairly wide chest. Like, for all the female on female action here, I doubt we're gonna get Rowan in the spa to show off some beefcake. Yep, it's all gonna be just cheesecake, no beefcake. I don't know if that's actually a phrase or not, or if I just made something up there.
Miss Delina, are you still with me?
How could I let this happen? I tried to be a hero, but
I suppose it would be an interesting thought to think if collectible card games are particularly popular amongst girls anywhere in the world, whether the West or Japan.
I don't have the power to
I mean, I could see them being somewhat popular, particularly if they were, if it was a game targeted to females in Japan, but in the West, I bet there's less than 10% of a female audience that would want to play a collectible card game, of collectible card game players, of which is already a very small number of a niche audience.
Is this it, Miss Delina? The spring?
And while digital
Yes,
certainly
I'll be
would
right back.
improve that,
Are you sure you can make it alone?
this background's getting reused when there should have been a custom
I'll be
background
fine
for
on
the
my own.
spring.
Please, wait here.
Yeah, if you think about like the
People to waste away
Yu-Gi-Oh
with a simple
anime
catch.
and how many female characters there are versus the versus male characters, it's a fairly
If she can't.
poor ratio.
There, good as new. I've never felt better.
What? That quick?
Well, someone's sad. You look like you could summon rain with those teary eyes.
So,
It's
is this
nothing.
like a
Are you
clone,
sure you're all right now?
or does it really just
I
work
feel
that
fit as a
fast?
fox. This happens all the time, so there's no need to worry about me. I'm used to it.
This happens all the time.
So it'd be funny if this was the
Yes,
reveal that she was
my
actually a
encounters with
robot.
Valdane tend to end in such a fashion. Oh, I've never shown you my peculiar little penchant for healing, have I? Well, it's quite simple, really. All you have to... Ow! What was that for?
Did she
You
headbutt
fight
him?
with Valdane, sustain
I
serious injuries,
think
and come to this spring to heal your
She
wounds
flicked him
all
on the
time?
forehead, which would be very Japanese.
Well, yes. In fact, just the other day... Ow!
So it's basically just a brother and sister
Erica?
play
Are
fighting.
you perhaps upset with me?
You could have explained all that sooner.
I'm sorry.
After seeing your injuries, I didn't know what was going to happen to you.
Why are you crying?
I don't know. I'm not sure myself. I thought you were going to die.
And I suppose it is fair to say that
Realize you were so worried about me.
that I've been characterizing the way the story has been as more of a romantic undertone, but it is possible just to intentionally and try to tell more of a feminine friendship relationship.
You see, well, I'm not very bright, so I end up taking risks like this quite often.
Which, yeah, I think
Father and Latika scold me about
that's
it
where
too,
this is going to probably end up, is that Erica is supposed to be learning lessons on just how to be friends with other people and friends with other women in particular in this instance.
I apologize profusely for my actions, as many times as it took for you to forgive me. Erica?
Of course I don't hate you. I'm sorry too. I didn't realize I was so upset.
You have nothing to apologize for. I'm just relieved our bond remains unsullied.
I'm surprised that Erica's not going to end up in the healing spring.
You've done so much for me.
Alright, that's weird.
What was that?
Oh no! That was the voice of Viridia Magna. She must have awakened.
She's awakened?
So I guess on the timeline, more has happened here. And this is not what fairies look like when you play fairies in Forestcraft.
The blight will spread even faster.
So it would be interesting to see if there is any card with blight in the name. This is where you could potentially have like a power creep character that would be a blighted fairy. And you could potentially not actually introduce a power creep by saying blighted fairies are 2/1 creatures for 1 mana, but they take 1 damage at the end of their turn. So the only way they stay on the field after the first time is if you give them an extra defense. And that could be effectively a key phrase where there's a whole bunch of characters in the card game that just have blight, and blight as a key phrase means take 1 damage at the end of your turn. It also allows you to reuse some very basic concepts from the basic set and the classic set of cards and bring them back and refresh them.
May the forest guide you.
So it'll be a real weird issue if we do go look at the cards and see that nothing has blight in the name or description at all. And she's doing this kind of magic, but clearly they don't call it magic. And at a certain point, I would define magic as usually calling upon the power of a god or some other more powerful creature than you, or using just a random power that is not yours. I thought the father was dead.
Doesn't the uncertainty of the situation cause you concern?
Wouldn't it be weird if it turned out she was the daughter of Balon?
And what is that?
My duty is to protect all life in Naterra. It isn't that I don't understand Managama's views.
I wish they would explain the relationship of the 3 main characters better. But yeah, I think Mr. Lena is not really technically using magic. I think she's using her own power and manipulating Aether, which you wouldn't at that point call magic. You would call more,
but even though I don't understand what happened to you in the past,
just a skill,
present, Erica.
something closer to alchemy, where you're using knowledge and skills.
Well, you're my partner, and you've held on this long. We've held on this long.
We're getting a lot of
because we've both
flashbacks.
got important people counting on us.
I will start by finding Arisa.
A wise decision. In that case.
I think they could have probably saved a lot of animation by just having the characters always have their sword shield.
Don't let yourself get hurt again.
Particularly when you have like this,
Of course not. I won't have
where
you
the
crying
sword is
anymore.
taking a lot of space up.
I wasn't crying. That was just an allergic reaction.
To what? The healing spring? I was only joking. Hurry along now.
Good luck, Miss Delina.
May the blessing of the forest be with you. Now then, back to the matter.
I feel like this chapter is just gonna kind of end, and I feel like the previous chapter kind of just ended too.
Princess of the forest, and I
Like, we still are.
am not used to making flowery speeches. Anyway, here I am. Come out, wherever you are.
It does.
Over here! I found her!
It does still seem like a problem with the episodes that they do kind of just try and tell a story that's not that good,
I will not be your
and then
hostage. Not today, not
you
tomorrow, nor the
get
day
kind of a
after.
bad story, and then
I
you
will
get
take
kind
up
of a
my
rushed
blade to
conclusion
ensure that
story.
our world
And in
continues
this
to
instance,
prosper.
particularly, it's not anybody really trying to defeat the veranda magma, or whatever, however you pronounce that, at all. I mean, you barely even fight any of the blighted creatures. Instead, it's just a lot of fighting between the three concerned parties, princesses and princes, as it were.
Where is Arisa?
I don't know how you would write a game like this so you could just tell shorter stories, if that's really what you wanted to do, and kind of just have an episodic experience. Yeah, I don't know how that would really work. Yeah, we've pretty much seen that the color of the sashes don't mean anything. So, once again, it would have been easy to have maybe some face paint or a tattoo, any kind of indicator,
Hey, you!
headband.
Not one of us, are you?
Like, see, you even got some of that. Like, yeah, you have a little bit of marking.
With neither skull nor manic armor.
Unless it's supposed to be the necklaces, but I don't think that is the case either.
There is only one person in this world I consider a comrade. And if I must defeat you to reach her, then so be it.
That's oddly determined.
Get her!
There is no time to spare. Stay out of my way or else.
See, you could have had her sword angled in such a way that it was pointing down always and in its sheath always, and then you could have had her put her hand on the sword to look like she was about to draw it, and then never animate it out, which would be fairly boring and wouldn't give them the opportunity to do these overlay animations, which clearly they are proud of. Otherwise, what you would want to do is just tilt the angle of this more so it's more linear in this upside down curved blade style, which looks like kind of a ridiculous way to hold a sword in the first place. But get rid of the flowing sashes, get rid of the big flowing skirt, and let this be within a much smaller box of pixels being animated and being shown, so you can have some more dead space. They still feel like they're... It doesn't even feel like they're afraid of dead space. It feels like they just did not plan anything ahead. They didn't say, hey, we're going to make this game for a target of 1080p resolution for like a 1080p TV and what often is shown on cell phones as a resolution. Therefore, of that 1080p resolution, we should divide it by 4 and have each character fit in one quadrant, like 4 columns, so we can have 4 characters that don't overlap each other at minimum.
Erica, you're here!
How dare you harm one of my allies?
Which is really just more of an argument that these are pre-made, pre-animated characters.
Arisa,
But if they
you
were,
wounded?
I would have thought you would have seen them in some other game.
You came just in time.
But
It's still too early for gratitude.
it's probably half truth. Both things are probably half true. It probably is
Yeah, you're
pre-made
right.
base animations, and then they put some extra work into it to make it look unique.
It might be wise to join
But then
a
they
side. I found an ally within Skull. But what will you do, Arisa?
I don't think I can choose, but
I don't know why
I
Arisa.
don't want this conflict to go on any longer. There's gotta be a way we can fix this.
I don't know why she wouldn't choose Skull. That
I thought you might say that. In which
the
case,
other side
we'll need
has
to cut
done
our way
nothing
past
to make
Managorma's
Arisa
troops.
decide to want
Are
to
you ready,
choose a
Arisa?
side as far as Magnamars.
I'll do whatever
Even
I
though
can
I
to put
would
an end to
personally agree with the idea that Magnamar is right, and that they should go down fighting against the Vergamana, whatever it's called. But they're not really doing that either. The Magnamar are fighting against the Skull, which is, I mean, kind of ridiculous. So yeah, that leaves us now with, yeah, there was 10 chapters here, 11 chapters here, and so we're probably gonna have 10 or 11 chapters for Rowan and 11 or 10 chapters for Eris, and clearly these two characters don't meet up with Erica or Arisa, so they must end up on the other side of the forest, and they must run into some other group of people or something. Something has to happen there. Generally speaking, the last character would be Yuan, and that would be the character that has the most bit of story, so I wouldn't be surprised if Eris takes over that role. Whereas if we were to go back to just Gears of Rebellion Uprising, how many chapters were there? 12 for that, and then previously for that we have 13, 13, 13, 13. So the number of chapters with every expansion is just getting shorter and shorter, but the writing is getting better and better because of that. Too, like, where were we with the first chapter? It was like, well, it would be kind of impossible to check without going in. 15 for Luna. Yep. And that seems very much like they just picked the number 15 out of the air to give each character 15 chapters. You don't need that much. Alright. So let's look here at the cards first, and then we'll open a pack and we'll call it a day. If I type in Blight, I hope I can spell it. B-L-I-G-H-T should be the word Blight. And if I type in B-L-I, apparently that does bring up cards. So, but it's mostly just going to be goblins then. Word goblin has B-L-I in the name. Alright, well then, instead of just searching for the word Blight, we know that this expansion should be Glory, I think, or Verdant, because either that or it would be Rebellion. So we'll search those three. And let's see if we see anything here that would have like blight. You have a robotic bagworm, which now makes a lot more sense as a card, in the sense that Steel Rebellion had robots, and a bagworm would be the forest, which this also does kind of imply that maybe the world they are in is in the future. Let's see. Here you have Fertile Aether, which again is verdant conflict. Here you have a King's Welcome, and this is when the 11 characters show up, which, how are the 11 sisters going to show up in the story in this chapter? I don't know, but they kind of need to. Either that, or they're just going to be entire characters that just don't get any backstory at all, which, again, while I don't fully understand how you would do an episodic main story expansion, I kind of get it. Like, the cell phone game I play, Destiny Child, which is, I always have to say, no relation to the singing group. It's a gacha game with lewd waifus in it, so it's not really for kids either. But it has, every month or two, a new story expansion to introduce 3 to maybe 5 characters, and in that they release 3 or 4 episodes that happen kind of in a temporary special event, and if you miss the temporary special event, you can go back and see the story, but you can't get the rewards for playing the special event. I could see doing something like that in this game instead of having a main story. And then the main story would just be the replay section, where you go back and replay a bunch of special events. And since this is a 4-year-old game, if every 2 months you had a special event that introduced 3 characters, that would be like, let's see, 24 times 3 at the minimum characters, so you would have 72 characters you could introduce minimum through that process, and that would be just main important characters. You could definitely throw in some secondary characters, or have cards that certainly reference secondary characters. The Ghastly Treant gets played a lot. I'm seeing a lot of Earth things here, but I am not seeing a lot of characters by name that seem to line up. Instead, I'm seeing a lot of characters named that I don't recognize at all. So we might be at a point where the card expansions have just branched completely away, or nearly completely away, from the main story expansions. And at that point, it kind of makes it silly that the main story is still going on. Because, yeah, while we have Mono from the previous chapter being shown here, I don't see any of these characters. Which maybe is an indication that I'm not looking far enough ahead. Let's see. Maybe it's not in Glory or Verdant or any of that. Maybe it's in Coliseum or Uprooted. Or even Fortune, which is the most recent expansion. we've looked at these cards before, but we haven't looked at them with the understanding of who the previous characters are. This definitely feels like a vampire hunter. I mean, there's still robotic engineers and characters being added. It could be that a lot of characters just get added in expansions, kind of regardless, like that they may add characters from the main story that happened 2 or 3 years ago just because they finally got something more interesting. See, here we see this card here plays Ladacia's Embrace, and that's from World Uprooted. And here's Arissa's leadership. So this is supposed to be Arissa, and she's not even really recognizable. And here's what the fairies originally looked like, and boy, do they need a new skin on them. And here you have Ladicia's Embrace, or Latica's Embrace. So it does kind of feel like there's 2 or 3 expansions that happened first that didn't have anything to do with the main story. And that kind of makes me wonder if there was at some point some kind of event and I've just missed that event and there isn't a replayability in this game. Like, I know I can replay and look at old games I've played, but I haven't seen anything that seems to indicate if there was going to be a story event where I could go back and see those story events. So yeah, that the way this all kind of breaks down is still confusing. It is worth mentioning that this quest, well, it doesn't really have any story element around it either. You just play the games and these characters say a few things that, and in this crossover they're basically saying things just reminding you of the Code Geass anime. So yeah. That puts us, yeah, I don't know where there could have been a replay thing, unless it was hidden deep in the game guide, which, like, this is just gonna open a web page. This is just gonna open a web page. The Shadowverse portal and the official website, I suspect, also just are gonna open web pages to probably the same web page. But yeah, there's no point here to say, hey, I want to go back and see some kind of event or main story that has happened. I don't see any indication that that was the occurrence. And I don't see any indication that the main story itself at one point was a special event. So I kind of am left with the feeling that they are kind of dropping the ball as far as convincing people to want to play the game, the main story, or to encourage more people to play the game in general by giving more backstory of the characters. You can see here, Fortune's Hand is the most recent one. World Uprooted is the second most recent one, which it seems like Rebirth of Glory was an expansion. It had nothing to do with the main story, but Verdant Conflict, like, kind of clearly shows that some of these characters are recognizable. We have yet to see somebody named Lisa, but we definitely know Mono. We definitely can recognize this guy. And so where the Ultimate Coliseum section is going to come into play, I don't know. And how this all goes back to World Uprooted, I don't know, unless it just means that we will still be fighting Baphomet all the way into Chapter 9. And I don't know if that means Fortune's Hand also will be in that same position. And unfortunately, with every new packet that we open, it does feel like we are lowering our odds of getting anything really interesting, because you just kind of have a or approaching a maximum or a very high saturation rate as far as these cards. I guess it doesn't matter in the end, because I'm getting card pack tickets for these. I'm not spending gold, so I might as well open them, and I might as well just turn them into vials. The vial cost and vial refund amount of these cards are not going to go up, so there's nothing really to sit on or wait. So we got Deathfowl. This is the second copy we've had of that, at least. We have Dragonclad Lancer. This is probably the fourth or fifth copy of that we've gotten. We have Blossoming Archer, which you would think Orisa at some point would run into a character like this. And I think this is our second copy of that. Pure Shot Angel. This is about our fifth copy of that. Another Moonrise Werewolf, which at minimum that's the third copy of that one. Probably about the sixth or seventh Tropical Grouper we've gotten. And at best this is our third Fairy Assault card. And then we have Ernesta Weapons Hawker. With a Rally 10, put a Dreadhound into your hand for 1 mana. Which means you'd have to play her. I think that's the second copy of that card we've gotten. Let's go back to our cards for a second and let's see where we are with this expansion. Yeah, sorry. Had a little bit of a brain freeze there. Fortune. That's what we wanted to do. We want to look at create cards. We want to keep a general idea. That was the fifth copy of this card. Really? Then if I liquefy extras, how come I don't have any legendaries? That is weird. Apparently this isn't a legendary. Even though it has a silver border. Like, I know the gem means it's swordcraft. But what makes something a legendary, what doesn't? I have no idea. This is like a 50 vial if you were to liquefy it. Liquefy extras. 3 copies of each roll kept. All extras will be liquefied. Starred, animated, promo, and basic cards are excluded. Is this a starred card? No. Is it an animated card? No. Is it a promo card? No. So why is this not in the pile of things that could be liquefied? That is really, really questionable. Why is that way? What if I came over here and then clicked liquefy without having create cards? No. So something is weird, to say the least, on that. And we want to keep an eye out particularly for cards piles that have more than 10 copies. And creating any of these cards. See, this one, for instance, costs 3,500 and then would only give you 1,000 back. So what makes this card a legendary and this card not legendary? Is it something in the logo up here? Yep. I think there's a problem with their system here. I would have to say I think there's a problem with their system quite a bit, because apparently something being gold doesn't make it gold. Something being silver apparently means that it's a low quality common card with this logo, and so it has to have kind of the pearlescent appearance, I guess, to be a legendary. We'll see if we have any. We probably have some temporary cards like that, and that's it. Yeah, there's still a lot of cards to get. It's just that they're not the cards you're likely to get. And at some point this is gonna boil down to just a list of having tons of the same thing. Alright, so yeah, this rainbow effect makes it a legendary, where we can double check this gold. Well, that at that point, nope, you have to uncheck the other one. This gold effect makes it a gold, and it doesn't always have to have the symbol. There are also, I guess, gold artifacts and legendary artifacts, and then silver is silver, which is better than bronze. Okay, good to know. And bronze is the worst. Okay. Interesting. Alright, and that puts me into this point where we need to figure out what this is going on. Play 1 round per free per day. So either I play this on screen and this video becomes super long, it's already an hour and 20 minutes, or I play this off screen because I need to play it. And as it were, I think I have to play it kind of off screen. Yeah, because I kind of desperately need to make a Portalcraft deck that has a chance of winning and not lock in like a Forestcraft deck, and that would certainly be quite a hassle to do all of this on screen. It is worth pointing out here, though, the kind of problem, since we've been doing the main story and not really talking about the card game at all, and I haven't really learned the card game well enough to really have a lot to say about the card game. You do kind of have this problem when you're playing a rotation deck, though, that you only have like 13 pages, or I only have about 13 pages with the level of cards I have, many of which also are animated versus unanimated versions of the same cards, and you need 40 cards to fit in a deck, which is a relatively small number of cards, but yeah, you're not given a lot of opportunity to do something different or wild in this. It is fairly straightforward. You have a very high chance of running into somebody else that has the exact same deck as you, playing the exact same cards as you, or at least extremely similar cards as you. For instance, like, you're not going to run into a 2 mana, 2 attack, 2 health creature that is just a basic creature that isn't fighter for Portalcraft. That's just the only card like that, for better or for worse. And on top of needing to do the arena thing today, I also have the daily quest, and I also have a few more games on the solo quest. And so, as I'm still trying to struggle to get through the main story, the game continues to throw more things at me. Also, that guild I tried to join has not yet approved me, so I have no idea if there's some reward or benefit to being in the guild, which you would think the game would have told me at some point. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.